Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Have a good day, all. This is our fourth meeting on Supreme Sign, Ayatul Kubra. So, at the beginning, it was the introduction, which really talked about some doubts or abyss of the time, like why are we trapped into some doubts with respect to belief, and some of the addressments from Ustad Nursi. We discussed a little bit. Then we just dived into the Supreme Sign, the second part. The first part was skipped because originally it was in Arabic. So we start with the second part. And in the second part, we just talked about there were 19 places that the traveler asked the creator. So we could only look at two of them. The first one, about the skies, how it, denotes the necessary existence of the creator. And the second one was the clouds and atmosphere, actually, atmosphere including the clouds. And now, since this is the last week that we, agreed upon having this sessions on Supreme Sign 4 weeks, so this is the last week. And I thought it would be very nice to jump into the new part of it. It's called second chapter, if we ignore the Arabic part. So that's the second chapter. So this piece is, I would say, to my understanding, much deeper compared to the first part, if this relative comparison is relevant. This part is just looking at the unity, while the first part was looking at the necessary existence. However, there's a note we will see. Ustad Nursi just says that you can just use both for existence and unity. But specific focus in this chapter is on unity. And since this is the last week, we will be able to talk the very first part, the first part of the second chapter, which talks about four truths. And among these four truths, maybe we will be able to go maybe first two, in my opinion. Okay, to start with, Colin Hocam, I want to, can I ask you to make a nice introduction on this second chapter, as I got drowned in a way. I was slept when I tried to read it before coming into this session in Turkish. I felt like, if we agree, I felt that my role in this meeting could be just having little bits, contribution to ignite conversation between you all speakers, so that in 50 years, maybe theology, philosophy can come to a point to talk about these things. So my prediction is 50 years. We need to just get this ready in a way to be understood, Having said that, can you just share your opinions on the second chapter we just before we start?
Before we start, Bismillah, I wasn't aware of what we were going to do this week. Unfortunately, I've been quite busy this week and not keeping up with my WhatsApp. But from memory, the first chapter with the 19 degrees of the first station, we are basically exploring the universe to find evidence of reasons why things exist as they do. And Ustad goes through 19 different degrees. 19 there is, we know it's an iconic number in our tradition. We needn't go into the reasons why Ustad has used 19, but it's not without forward planning, I think. 19 different reasons why we should bow in reverence to a creator. The very fact that there is a creator is quite clear after you have gone through this, what I call an Abrahamic journey, finding reasons for things existing other than their own selves. We know that Abraham ﷺ looked at the sun, he looked at the moon, he looked at the stars, and when he saw that they all set, he realized that they cannot be the masters of their own fate, the masters of their own creation. They cannot self-create. And what Ustad does in the first 19 degrees of the first station, he goes through the whole of the cosmos and he searches and he looks at everything, how everything has been ordered, and he comes to the conclusion that there are a set of perfections at work in the creation which can belong only to a creator. And therefore, at the end of the first station, we have come to the conclusion that there is a creator who is responsible for all of these things that he has witnessed through this 19-step journey. But that is not enough. It's not enough to come to the conclusion that there is a creator, because most people actually, when you ask them, will not say that there is nothing responsible for bringing the universe into existence, whether they believe it's God or whether they believe it's nature or whether they believe it's something else. No one is of the belief that things can just appear for no reason. What Ustad does in the second chapter, he shows us that that creator can only be one creator, one single creator who creates everything. To create one atom, you have to be able to create the whole of the universe. To create one rose, you have to be able to create all roses. So in this second chapter, we are looking at arguments for unity. In other words, we are getting to know in greater depth and detail who that creator is that we've been introduced to in that first station. So it's not just a case of proving the existence of God, it's proving the existence of one God, a God who is a hands-on God, a God who is creating at all moments, a God who creates all things, and who is always in the process, continually in the process of creating and recreating. He's not a God of the gaps. He's not a prime mover. He is a God who creates all things with the same ease that he creates one thing. And so this second chapter is looking not so much at proofs of the necessary existence of God, but at the unity and oneness and singularity of God.
Oh, thank you for the introduction. Muammer, do you want to say something before we start reading the text?
Actually, Konal Hocam put it very perfectly. I think the first chapter is kind of foundation. Like he's proving the existence of the creator, and the second chapter, what is the attribute of this creator, and how we should, what kind of creator or we should believe. And like he will start, his divinity is absolute, his dominicality is absolute, his perfection is absolute. So the end, like as Konal Hocam said, that 19 different stages is very important. We should really, I missed some of them, I couldn't attend some of the meetings, but like the first chapter is basically the foundation of a structure, and the second chapter is basically making beautiful, let's say.
Okay, so since we're excited, I think it's good time to start reading a little bit, then contemplating upon. Concerning proofs of the divine unity, the second chapter, the traveler who had been sent to the world in order to attain faith, who journeyed through the whole cosmos in his mind in order to ask all things concerning his creator, to seek his sustainer in every place, and find his God, with the utmost certainty, at the point of necessary existence, this traveler said to his intellect, "Come, let us depart on a new journey in order to behold the proofs of the unity of our necessarily existent Creator." They set out together. At the first stopping place, they saw 4 sacred truths prevailing over the whole cosmos, truths that self-evidently necessitated the unity of God. So we will be talking about this first stopping place, and I don't know how many out of these 4 truths, how many we can go. The first one. The first truth is absolute divinity. Uluhiyeti mutlaka. The absorption of each class of man in a mode of worship dictated by their innate dispositions. The species of worship engaged in by other animate beings as well as inanimate beings through the performance of their essential functions. The way in which all material and immaterial bounties and gifts in the cosmos become means inciting men to worship and thanks, to praise and gratitude, the fashion in which all the manifestations of the unseen and epiphanies of the spirit, revelation and inspiration unanimously proclaim the exclusive fitness of one God to receive worship, all of this in most evidential fashion proves the reality and dominance of a single and absolute divinity. That's one sentence. So, Colin Hocam, can you talk about, how come, talking about the word worship and the way I understand in the layman, way, worship is something we do every day, like five daily prayers and, fasting, abstaining. So these are, easy understanding of worship. But here, he's talking about something very deep, looks like. How come, he's proving the absolute divinity, looking at the first sentence, the slok sentence, how come he's just proving that absolute divinity exists based on the notion of worship?
I think here by worship, we shouldn't understand acts of worship. I have an actual problem with the notion of acts of worship. I think that all acts can be worshipful with the right intention. But here, I think, as you said, worship is much more deep. It's much deeper, more profound than our colloquial understanding of worship. Worship means acting or performing in a manner that you are supposed to act and perform. In other words, doing what you were created to do. And again, because I always sit in the same seat when I engage in these study circles, and I'm facing a window, and you know that in my garden there is a cherry tree. The cherry tree is easy for me to talk about. The cherry tree is engaged in worship in the sense that it is doing what it was created to do. So the cherry stone grows under the ground, and it puts forward a shoot, and the shoot becomes a stem, and the stem becomes the trunk of the tree, and then all of the nutrients that it needs hasten towards it as though from somewhere unseen, and it grows into a tree. It puts out leaves, it puts out blossoms, and then it puts out fruit, and then of course in the winter all the leaves drop, and then again in spring all of that happens again. So there is a cycle, there is a process, and that cherry tree at every moment is subjugated to things other than itself. We know that the cherry tree cannot self-create. Nothing can self-create. At every moment, the cherry tree is in need of things other than itself. For example, each branch is of a certain length. The branch has to know where to stop. So whoever creates that cherry tree must have knowledge, must have wisdom, must have a whole host of different attributes. Otherwise, every single particle of that cherry tree would have to be omniscient, would have to have absolute knowledge. And yet we see that the cherry tree is subjugated. It is subjugated to things other than itself. It depends on so many things, and something which is multi-dependent, dependent on so many things.
Is this the keyword, being subjugated, to understand the worship versus
yes, it's subjugated. It's subjugated to a power other than itself. It is in need. It grows from a cherry stone, a tiny cherry stone. And then we see this huge cathedral-like structure of wood and leaves and beautiful blossoms and fruits. From where? It's not self-created, because to self-create something would first have to exist. And if it existed, then it wouldn't need to self-create. So that we know this is a contingent cherry tree. Moreover, the cherry tree, if the cherry tree itself had free will, why would it every year choose to die? at exactly the same, more or less exactly the same time? Why would it choose to tread the same trajectory every year? So clearly this cherry tree is subjugated and it is doing what it is supposed to do. It was created to be a cherry tree. And therefore we can conclude, and of course I'm shortening this because we don't have time, we can conclude that the maker of this cherry tree must be one. It can only have one maker because of the inherent interdependence of its parts, because of the equilibrium, the order, and the justice, you know, everything in its correct place that we see. It would be impossible for this to be the work of thousands of different hands, each with a different plan. So clearly this has only one maker. And then when you look at all cherry trees and you look at the similarities between the cherry trees, you realize that that same creator who created the cherry tree in my garden also created the cherry tree in Harun's garden, 3,000 miles away. And this is the way that we can understand the divine unity, because from one cherry tree, we can realize that there is only one creator and not multiple hands. And from the multiplicity of cherry trees, we know also that that creator is the same creator creating here and creating 3,000 miles away. And therefore multiple gods are precluded. So of course, technically we say that Allah is Ahad and Wahid, you know. He is one, he is exclusively singular, and he is inclusively singular. Is there anything more that you'd like me to say about the worship?
Yeah, I think this was perfect point, and I noticed that what you talked about actually also spans, you know, the second truth, which is about absolute dominicality, the third one,
sorry, yeah,
perfections, and even the last one, which is sovereignty. But
oh, right, okay. Well, that's good then. I mean, it can be a little taster of what's to come.
But I think this is very relevant. Also, things are very connected. The way Nursi puts everything, like he's introducing before, you know, he's getting into topics so that our minds are ready to understand the second, third, and so on. So when we just go starting with the first one. So
yeah, you're right. I mean, he is the master of tying everything together. You know, his works also exhibit unity and unicity. You know,
isn't it? Absolutely.
It's a reflection of what he's talking about in his own work.
Absolutely. So wonderful. Muammer, do you want to add on this part?
Actually, I have a question here. So it says that the observation of each classes of man in a mode of worship. So what we should understand from this mode of worship, like we know that all the other creation, what they do is worship by their nature. But what about human being? What is the mode of worship that, like, is it about different religion or what?
Yeah, great question.
I don't think it's, well, I was going to ask you, Harun, to give an answer for this, because I had sort of more or less, I had a similar question. I believe that the human beings have conscious worship and unconscious worship. You know, from one perspective, we can consciously worship, but from another perspective, we are created in a way that puts us on a particular trajectory in life. You know, depending upon what our talents are, depending upon what our abilities are, and what we're capable of doing, everyone will do something in life. One will be a butcher, one will be a baker, one will be a doctor, one will be a professor. These are things that we are geared towards, really. So whatever we are created for, we will do, and that will be a worship, because worship is what you are tied to doing. So what you are tied to doing, you know, religion, ligio, means I am tied. So whatever you are tied to. So a baker is tied to baking bread. And from the larger perspective, that is what he's created to do. and he is worshipping, he's feeding people. So Allah is Razaq. Allah is Razaq by virtue of those people who are baking bread, those people who are butchers, those people who are farmers. You know, Allah's Razaqiyah, Allah's provision is mediated by human beings doing various jobs. And those are modes of worship. Now, they may be completely unconscious worship. If the people who are, you know, butchers and bakers are not really aware that they are working actually as, you know, they are just as subjugated as the cherry tree, then, you know, they will realize that they are also worshiping. Now, conscious worship means being aware of what we're doing. So human beings can be, are worshippers anyway. We are worshipful beings. But to be conscious of it is what is needed for human beings. And that is where they differ from other beings. You know, other beings are worshipping, and that's all they are doing. They may be conscious of it, but they're not self-aware. Human beings are the only self-aware beings. So we need to be aware of our position as worshipful creatures, and we need to worship consciously. But we all have different modes of worship.
I think the question was very nice, Muammer, and thank you, Khalil Hocam, for addressing this question. As you know, at the start, I just mentioned the worship word, you know, just connects to regular worship, so acts of worship. But here things is much subtle and, you know, deeper. So as you mentioned, here in Turkish, I checked, actually it is saying Nevi Beşer'in her bir nev'i. So when I read from here, it's like each class of man, but in Turkish it is Nevi Beşer'in her taifesi. So this might be a little bit different as well in the translation. However, I think you summarized, you said it very nicely, Khalil Hocam. With any disposition, any profession, actually, we are just worshiping, whether we are conscious of it or not. Because as you defined the word worship, it is just functioning, you know, as it is required to function. With this definition, so all human beings, all kind of professions actually is kind of mode of worship, to my understanding, based on what you're saying.
I think Khalil Hocam put it very nicely there. So the all other creations worship directly goes to the creators, but only the human being's intention needed to like direct his worship towards Allah. You know, anyway, we are worshiping, but there is Allah let us to decide to direct this worship to the creators or to the nature, whatever, you know. So I think human beings have the ability to direct his worship, as we are not like other creations. Their worship directly goes to the creator, but human beings worship, it depends on the human intention.
Thank you. I see Jezmabi, you raised your hand, please.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. Regarding worshipping, so this the first truth is uluhiyyat mutlaqa, so the absolute divinity. When we say uluhiyya, you know, the word ilah, it is in Arabic, for example, when we say Allah, it means al-ilah, so the most loved one, so the adored one. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is the most loved one because he is the source of every beauty. So we are loving him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at the degree of absolute divinity. So we must love him at the degree of absolute divinity. We must worship him because he is the source of all beauty. He is the source of all kinds of bounties, blessings. And Sayyid Nursi, he is, as far as I see, he is focusing at this part. He is saying that with worshipped, with thanks and worship, so showing gratitude showing, submitting our thanks to the Creator, because He is the source of every blessing, every ni'mah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want anything to be associated in that respect, in terms of loving Him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, the example of a tree of the universe, the most perfect fruit of this tree is the human being. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is not giving any kind of permission to associate any kind of partners to Him in terms of showing gratitude. So in the Risale Tafsir, he is emphasizing this point, Inna shirka la zulmun azim, explaining that ayah in many parts of the Tafsir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling that He is not forgiving those who are associating partners to Him, because all the gratitude, all the blessings should be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He is the only source of every beauty, every blessing. Yes, thanks.
Thank you for sharing your understanding with us. Also, I see there is some relevant shares on this. Water, Mehmet Su brother, I believe that's water. A whale eats a lot of fish in the sea, but that whale does not know the Razzaq. Only humankind can understand Razzaq. So I think you're reminding us the quality of being human is to understand what Razzaq really means in a way.
Could I say something there at that point? Sorry.
Please, yeah.
I don't want to contradict my dear brother, Mehmet Su, and I don't think it would be a contradiction, because I think the way he's phrased that, I think we need to amend it slightly. The whale actually does know the Razzaq, but how can I say it? If you think of a child, a baby that's just come into the world, the baby knows only its mother. It's aware of its mother, but it's not aware of anything else, and it's not aware that it's aware. So if you think of the whale is aware of its Razzaq, but it's not aware of anything but that. So in a sense, it is doing that worship. If you think of the angels that are representing the worship of the whale, then they are directly aware of Allah, but they are not self-aware. Whereas humans can be self-aware and they can withhold that worship. So I would suggest that in one sense, the whale does know the Razzaq, but not consciously. Just as the baby knows its mother, but not consciously.
Yeah, these are very nice approaches to understand the whole picture. Thank you for adding these layers to understand or to approach better. I think recent years, I'm just trying to approach anything. I'm aware that I cannot pick them or grasp anything wholly, anything else on this point? If Muammer or Colin Hocam want to add?
Really, but one more thing, like there's a different level of understanding, right, of everything. Like the other creation, they have level of understanding, but the human being has, very high level of understanding of like everything what created. What differentiate us from the angels as well is that level of understanding. It doesn't mean angels doesn't understand some of the names of Allah. They do, but it's it's not like Prophet ﷺ.
Thank you. And also,
can I add something here?
Yes, Nabi Abi, please.
Assalamu alaikum again. Every creation is worshipping with their tongue of disposition, lisan khal. Then they may know the real Razzaq and real Creator, but offering glorification and offering thanks to the Creator on behalf of whole creation, that responsibility is loaded on the shoulder of the human beings. When we say at-tahiyyatu lillah in tashahhud, Yeah, we offer all living beings glorifications and worship to the Creator as on behalf of whole creation as a representative of those ones. Since human being has been created as foreman for whole creation, then offering the worship and offering the glorification to the Creator, that is the responsibility of the human being. Thank you.
Thank you. You're, I think, taking us to the comprehensiveness of human worship. Okay, so we were at this first sentence done. So yeah, we can take it from here. For those who respond to divinity, that is the fitness to be worshipped. Very nice definition. Fitness to be worshipped with thanks and worship are the conscious and animate fruits on the highest branches of the tree of the cosmos. If others were able to gratify and place under this obligation those conscious beings in such fashion as to make them turn away from and forget their true object of worship, who may indeed be swiftly forgotten because of his invisibility, this would be in such utter contradiction to the essence of divinity and its sacred purposes that it could in no way be allowed. It is for this reason that the Quran so repeatedly and with such vehemence refutes polytheism and threatens the polytheists with hellfire. Colin Hocam, at this point, I think I want to ask from the very last sentence, like the Quran's, refuting polytheism and threatening polytheists. So he's bringing another tafsir or commentary on these things, I think, these meanings. It's like, what is the core here? What is in this words, Quran threatening or refuting?
It's if we divide up the names and if we distribute them among the creatures, saying, for example, okay, it's very, very dangerous. It's very dangerous because if I actually do believe that I have some power, but of course God has lots and lots of power, but I have some power, then we are alienating ourselves straight away. It's a delusion to think that I have some power. If I go through my life thinking that I have some of those attributes, and again, this is shirk. It means you believe in a God, but you actually distribute his attributes among his creation. And why it is dangerous is because we become deluded. When we distribute those attributes, we keep some for ourselves. We say, well, I have, God is very, very knowledgeable and I have just a little bit of knowledge. He's given me some knowledge and I can increase it, but I can never, ever get to his. No, this is wrong thinking. This is wrong thinking. And why it is with such vehemence it's been refuted is because Allah is so Rahim, so compassionate. He knows that if we start distributing his names, we will be keeping some of those names for ourselves, and when we keep some of those names for ourselves, of course, in actual fact, it's impossible. We can't do it, but we believe that we can. We truly believe that our knowledge is ours, and we're taught to appropriate those names all the way through our life, from the time we are children. Now, that has to be, we have to do that to a certain extent, but it's a fiction. We have to realize that at the beginning, we have to own our names in order to disown them. Because if we didn't own them, in inverted commas, we wouldn't be able to understand the names at all. And Ustad Nursi goes through this very eloquently and elegantly in Ana. He says that we make these false comparisons. He says, just as I build my house, therefore someone must have built this universe, so it's necessary. It's a necessary fiction. But if we don't realize that it's a fiction, and if we really think that we have some of those attributes, this is disastrous. Because what we do is we start to build up our ana. And that ana grows and grows and grows until it starts to become like Pharaoh. And this is why it's dangerous. For Allah is not lessened. Allah is not lessened by our polytheism. It doesn't hurt Allah. You know, what it hurts
Right.
is us. It hurts us. It destroys us. So Allah gives us these very, very stark and very vehement refutations of polytheism, you know, and all of these terrible images of hell, terrible images of fire and of burning for the mushrikeen. Why? Because we damage ourselves with this shirk and we consign ourselves to hellfire. So of course, you know, Allah is not angry at this. He is so compassionate that he doesn't want us to suffer. So he's saying, don't distribute my names among the creation. See those names as belonging to me and me alone. And that's the only safe way.
Yeah, that's the only safe way. Here in this text, what I understand, if we don't go this safe way, the other ways, as you say, if we distribute attributes, the names to other, I mean, I shouldn't say other, to created existence, then it will be a means to forget the real divinity. This is the argument here, right?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely.
if I'm to switch from the real divinity to anything else, then it will be a means to forget the true divinity, the real divinity.
Or if not, perhaps forgetting completely, mistreating in the sense that you demote him. He becomes demoted. For example, he will become demoted to the position of prime mover, for example, because if you think that everything has been set in motion, you know, at the beginning of creation, and then everything now is like clockwork working, then you've demoted him and you've pushed him back to prime mover. So you're according creative power to other things. Now, as I said before, that doesn't hurt Allah, it hurts you. It hurts you because when you demote Allah, it means you build up other things. And the most important thing for you is yourself. So you will build up yourself. Because if you're going to distribute the names, you're going to keep the best for yourself. And then it means you're going to fan the flames of Pharaohism, you know, in your own soul.
Right. This is so subtle and so relevant to our practical lives and how we need to see things happening. This is very important, it looks like.
It's very, very important. This is why Ana Risalasi is, you know, someone asked me today, and it's quite relevant, why did Said Nursi reject Sufism for modern human beings? You know, and one of the reasons is that there are so many issues that we have to solve before we can even think about luxuries like Sufism. And one of them is you know, it's a luxury. One of them is the issue of Ana. Another is the issue of nature. Now, if I go tomorrow to a Sufi sheikh, he's not going to talk to me really. He's going to talk to me about maybe diseases of the soul, but no one talks about Ana the way that Said Nursi talks about it. No one talks about Tabiat the way he talks about it. No one talks about Ismi and Harfi the way that he talks about it. So this is why, you know, these things are important. As you said, Harun Hoja, you said, you know, this is an extremely important and relevant issue. It's very relevant. This is not some obscure theological issue, you know, for academics to argue about. This is something,
Right.
an everyday thing, you know. If I own my own knowledge, it causes me problems. It will cause me problems.
Yeah, subhanallah, very, very true. You know, at this point, it's at the core. You know, it's amazing. Muammer, do you want to add? I see Okan shared nice excerpts from Mesnevi Nuriye, but it is in Turkish, so maybe we can just save and share these. Otherwise, it would take time to translate and talk upon. But it's just showing us how human being is different than other creatures. Mohammed?
I would like to read some parts from the Risale Nur if you give me 2 minutes, which is
2
related
minutes
why.
Started counting down.
Okay. So concerning the second part of your doubts, you said if some of the worship of some insignificant being is directed towards certain causes, does this cause any deficiency to the worship of all beings, from particles to the planets, which is directed towards the necessarily existent one, the absolute object of all worship? This is the question. So what happens if, if we direct some of our thanks to certain creation or causes? The answer, the all-wise creator of the universe made the universe like a tree with conscious being as its most perfect fruit, which is human being. And among conscious beings, he made man. Sorry, this is there's jinn and angels and human being. Amongst conscious beings, he made man its most comprehensive fruit. And man's most important fruit, indeed the result of his creation, the aim of his nature, and the fruit of his life are his thanks and worship. The aim of creation of human being, a man's most important fruit, indeed the result of his creation, the aims of his nature, and the fruit of his life are his thanks and worship. Would that absolute sovereignty and independent ruler, that one single one of unity, who creates the universe in order to make himself known and loved, give away to other men's, the fruit of the whole universe, and man's thanks and worship, his most elevated fruit? Totally contrary to his wisdom, will he make vain and futile the result of creation of the fruit of the universe? God forbid. Will he be content to give away the worship of the creatures to the others in a way that will deny his wisdom and his dominicality? And although he demonstrates through his action that he wishes to make himself known and loved in unlimited degree, will he cause his most perfect creatures to forget him by handing over to the causes their thanks and gratitude, love and worship, and cause them to deny the exalted purpose of the universe? So I think like the human beings' worship is very valuable. And
Isn't it?
Allah doesn't want to, as we talked at the beginning, all the other creations worship goes to the Allah directly, but only the human being can direct his worship either towards Allah or towards the creation. So let's say it's just an example. Let's say you have a factory and you're producing different product, and your best product, let's say you have a best product and it's your signature product, and somebody trying to have ownership over that signature product.
Very nice.
Nobody can accept this.
Yeah, thank you for this part and for the example, which is very understandable. Yeah, especially signature products, it's all the patents, their laws, and I think the manufacturer or the CEO just follows closer, much more closer, this signature products with respect to comparison that you give. Okay, so we are in last 15 minutes, so I think Colin Hocam, do you want to add more on the first truth?
No, I think we've said quite a lot.
Okay, so Also, there is another comment from SP. Also, it is giving the fourth category are workers who know what they are doing and why and for whom they are working and why the other workers are working and what the purpose of the Lord of all dominion is and why he is causing them to work. Workers of this category are therefore bosses and supervisors over other workers. This is again the comprehensiveness of human being. Okay, second truth, absolute dominicality. The ubiquitous workings of a wise and compassionate hidden hand throughout the cosmos, especially in animate beings and their nurturing and development everywhere in the same fashion and yet in a totally unexpected form, must be without doubt the emanation and light of an absolute dominicality and a decisive proof of its reality. Yeah, before getting into the second sentence, maybe this might be enough. So here, can I ask the main difference to grasp about, of course they are connected, but divinity versus dominicality, uluhiyet versus rububiyet. How can we differentiate, or does it really matter? What is the main take in this first sentence? Colin Hocam?
I think that the first, the uluhiyah, of course, is the how was it expressed? Not capable of being worshipped, but
right, something
one
like
who
that.
Deserves to be.
Fitness
Yes,
to be worshipped.
Yeah, the one who is fit to be worshipped, or the one who deserves to be worshipped. You know, and nothing else deserves to be worshipped apart from Allah because of His unity and unicity. And then an example of unity and unicity comes in dominicality or lordliness, maybe. Allah is Rab, His rububiyah, of course, is how Allah nurtures and sustains. So I think the second truth is that nurturing and sustaining, rububiyah, tarbiyah, is something which is absolute. It is a ubiquitous trait. It is a perfection that we see absolutely everywhere. Things that are being sustained, things that are being fed, looked after, tended to, things that are grown, things that are brought to their point of perfection. We mentioned the cherry tree before. You know, at every step of the way, this cherry tree is being looked after by one pair of hands, right? Just by one pair of hands, because of the order, because of the equilibrium that we see there, because of the beauty of the way everything works together so harmoniously. It's being tended to, it's being nurtured and sustained. And this nurturing and sustaining, this rububiyah, is ubiquitous and it is everywhere. There is nowhere without the impress and the stamp and the seal of one singular, unique creator.
Very nice. Can I also specifically ask about this totally unexpected form? Like, we understand the wisdom and being compassionate to some extent, but here, what is the relevance of mentioning, presenting us these things in a totally unexpected form?
You asked, I'm going to turn that back on you now, because you asked it in a rhetorical sense, and we
not
haven't
really.
had...
You know, I want to open that.
Can I ask you what you understand from it, please?
I always connect this with, you know, Ramazan Risalesi, treatise on Ramadan. Over there, you know, Ustad Nursi uses this verse, Min haysu la yehtesib. So Allah presents all the bounties to us in unexpected form, as it says here. So, for instance, in my life, I'm expecting to be, you know, let's say, better in any sense. But I'm also projecting this being better, like I need to do this and that, you know, in order to be better in general sense. But what happens in my life, maybe 50% or 40% of my projects achieved. But at the end of the day, when I look back, actually I see that all bounties, everything's are given to me in an unexpected form. So you see what I mean? So I think I relate this unexpected form, like most of the time we see the order, wisdom under the workings of the creator, but these things are not necessarily in a way that we design or our intellect designs like it should be in a way type.
You're saying it's not formulaic, in other words.
It's not formulaic, yeah.
I mean, there are
or there is no clear formulation.
yeah, there are formulas, but some things happen in ways that you wouldn't expect, or sometimes, you know, something happens to you and you don't realize why it happened until 3 weeks afterwards, and you say, this is why that happened. It was totally unexpected at the time. I think this is to show that Allah has unicity. In other words, Allah is creating at all times. Allah is hands-on in a sense, you know. It's not that he started things rolling, the ball rolling, you know, he hit the first billiard ball, snooker ball, and then everything else is now moving. No, it's not a photocopy cosmos, you know. Suddenly, you know, things happen and you aren't expecting it, because he is trying to tell us, or he's telling us, that he is creating in unique ways at all times. You know, he's not a photocopy God. It's not a conveyor belt with everything being produced in exactly the same way.
So we can take this for uniqueness, maybe.
I think uniqueness, and also, you know, you get, often he talks about seeds and grains all looking very, very similar, and yet what we get from them, you know, are so different. You know, you would expect them to be similar, and yet you get very, very different things coming from the seeds which look almost identical. Things like that.
Yeah, perfect. And this also takes us to wisdom and compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, wisdom there, the plan, everything is planned, you know, just because we say it's not formulaic, but there is still a plan. It's not haphazard, you know, it doesn't happen for no reason. It happens for a reason. And when there is reason, and when there is purpose, when we see purpose in things, then we know that the one who did these things is wise.
Yeah, and also this explains like a lot of stuff happening on me. It's a sign of compassion, but also here I understand a lot of stuff does not happen as I want. It's also a sign of compassion.
Yeah.
Muammer, do you want to talk about this paragraph?
When Colin Hocam talk about the, you know, we are getting different fruits from the very small similar seeds, and also what came to my mind, you know, if two different people eat same fruits, the effects on their body will be different as well. You know, like if I eat apple, it can, you know, its effect on me might be different. I think different from it can also change from person to person, you know, like, so like we are not eating same apple, we are not getting the same benefit from apple, you know. So like some people have allergies to different foods, you know. So like not only the creation is unique, but also the end result also different according to the different people, you know.
Yeah, very nice point.
I don't know if it makes
yeah, definitely it's a very nice explanation. Thank you. So yeah, I have a little bit of time, so I think let's go on over this one too. An absolute dominicality cannot accept any partnership, for since the important aims and purposes of dominicality, such as the manifestation of its beauty, the proclamation of its perfection, and the revelation of its precious arts, and the display of its hidden accomplishments, are combined and concentrated in particulars and animate beings, the slightest attribution to God of a partner when entering even the most particular of things and the smallest of animate beings will frustrate the attainment of those purposes and destroy those aims. Konal Hocam, can you just, I know we have a little bit of time, but can you give your opinion to us on this piece? It's talking about partnership, right?
I mean, to keep it very, very simple, there is an English saying, too many cooks spoil the broth, you know? Broth is a kind of very, very thin soup. So if you've got 10 people in a kitchen, each wants to cook the same thing, but according to their own recipe, it's chaos. You can have 10 people working together according to the same recipe. That's not partnership. It's not partnership in the sense of shirk. This is unity. They're reading from the same recipe. And that's fine because there's only one recipe. But if you've got 10 recipes, then it's going to be disastrous. And we know this. You can't have two kings in one kingdom. And now in the UK at the moment, we're realizing, you know, they lost one queen. Now there is a king. You can't have a king and a queen together at the same time. You can't have two prime ministers, you know, all of these things. We know this. We know this. If I write a book and then someone says, well, I wrote a chapter. If they didn't, then of course I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to sue them. So we know this in a very practical sense. We know that partnership is precluded. And when things are so subtly created with such equilibrium, such harmony, the slightest interference would knock everything out of sync. I could throw this back onto you as a systems person. You will appreciate this. You know, if someone outside of the system tries to interfere, then they can destroy the whole thing, presumably.
And we can see in today's technological companies, you know, you see this Microsoft, Apple, you know, they just lean towards, you know, producing each part like, you know, CPUs, GPUs themselves, because of the fact that, you know, if you're a software producer, your hardware also should be tailored towards software so that you have the best perfection or best way of attaining the purpose. So we can see that in today's technological companies too. Everyone is leaning towards, you know, producing every bit of pieces themselves so that they just, you know, work much more efficiently.
And they're very jealous of their ownership over it as well. They're very jealous, you know.
Right.
they you know, they secure it and they guard it very, very, you know, what's the word? Well, jealously.
Jealously, yeah, they take it very seriously. Wonderful, very nice session. Muammer, do you have your last words?
I think we should also focus on the absolute. You know, if we are talking about an absolute, you cannot interfere in it. Like if I am asking a little bit help, it means I'm not absolute, right? So since we are not absolute, our power, our wisdom, everything is partial. It's a little bit difficult to us to understand what does absolute mean. When we are talking about absolute, it cannot, you know, it cannot accept anything, you know, like even if it's very tiny amount of it. If you can add a system very little input, then that system is not absolute. I don't know. Maybe you can elaborate more on this. But if we are talking about absolute, it is absolute. There's nothing beyond this.
It was very well explained. I mean, I don't think you can better that. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't accept anything anyway. It wouldn't be absolute, you know. This is why I cannot say that I have power and Allah has power. You know, I can pretend, and at the beginning, as I said, it's a necessary fiction. We have to go through that fiction. But ultimately, as Muammer said, you know, if Allah is absolutely knowledgeable, it leaves no room for anyone else to make any claim.
Very nice. Thank you, everyone, for joining, particularly Konal Hocam, Muammer. Thanks for your contributions. And I see Nebi Abi posted a very nice entry, which looks like a very nice closing prayer. So I can read that before closing. O my sustainer, all the vital glorifications living beings display through their lives and the gifts they present to their Maker through the manner of their creation are yours alone. By visualizing them and through my belief, I too offer them to you.
Amen.
Thank you very much, and have a nice week.
Thank you, Harun, for your moderating. Always excellent as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.